Up until that day, I always thought my life was predictable and well organized. My routine, my marriage, my job, everything seemed to fall into place as it should. My wife Janice and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm of married life with our 2 young sons. Despite the usual ups and downs of parenting and work, I believed we had the kind of marriage most people envied, one built on trust, love, and understanding. There didn't appear to be any major cracks in the foundation, or so I thought, but as the saying goes, life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. That cool autumn afternoon marked the start of my unraveling sense of security. I had come home feeling under the weather, unaware that it was the least of my worries. As I lay on the couch, tired and worn out, I overheard a conversation that would change the course of my life. Janice and her sister Carla unknowingly shattered the illusion of my perfect world, revealing secrets hidden in plain sight. What followed was a series of revelations no amount of love or effort could fix. It all came out by chance, as these things often do. I had just gotten home from work feeling unwell and collapsed onto the couch, eyes closed. I parked in the garage and, since it was chilly, made sure to close the door. My wife, unaware I was home, pulled into the driveway and left her car outside. She and Carla entered through the front door and headed to the kitchen. The couch I was lying on faced away from them so they didn't see me. I nearly got up to tell them I was home, but a wave of nausea kept me down. So I lay there listening to their conversation without meaning to. I gathered that my wife had come home to show Carla a new dress she bought for their annual Chicago trip. For the past 4 years, the two of them had gone from our Indianapolis home to the Windy City for a weekend of shows and art exhibits. While they were away, Bob, Carla's husband, and I would watch the kids. We figured the women deserved a break from their responsibilities. By the way, my wife is Janice and I'm Jim. We have 2 kids, Ryan 5 and Sean 2. We'd been married for 7 years and I was a middle manager at a large logistics company. We lived comfortably on my salary. Janice is very attractive, and after 2 kids she's kept in shape. We have sex often and enjoy each other. I thought we were the perfect couple with the perfect marriage. Carla and Bob live a few blocks away, and we do most things together as families and friends. Carla is like a younger version of my wife, and the two are nearly inseparable. They have a daughter, Melissa, 3. As I lay there waiting for my nausea to pass, I overheard Carla admiring the dress my wife was showing her. "Wow, that's a sexy dress. Has Jim seen it? Does he know you're taking it on the trip?" "No, if he saw it he'd get suspicious, so don't say anything, okay?" "Randy's going to love it," Janice replied. "Who the hell is Randy?" I wondered. My nausea was gone, but I stayed still, wanting to hear more. "Are you bringing something for Mark?" Janice asked. "Who the hell is Mark?" I thought, growing more confused. Carla responded. "I've got some special lingerie I've hidden from Bob that'll really turn him on." "I have some special lingerie too," Janice said. "Jim hasn't seen it either. It'll really drive Randy wild." Good God, I thought. They must be having affairs, and it sounds like they know these guys pretty well. I was shocked and stunned by what I was hearing. Who were these men and how long had this been going on? My mind was spinning from everything I'd overheard. Then Janice said, "Are you going back on birth control this year?" "Yes. I only wanted 1 child with Randy. It's lucky he and Jim look so much alike. Even Jim's mother says Sean is the spitting image of him." Oh my God, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. And the nausea struck me like a freight train. I fought to keep my stomach from turning. I wanted to vomit so badly that I could feel the bile rising in my throat. Thankfully, they chose that moment to leave, so Carla could drop Janice off at home. As soon as they closed the front door, I bolted from the sofa and rushed to the downstairs bathroom. I barely made it in time, throwing up into the toilet just as the puke knocked my mouth. Thank God the lid was up. I felt like I threw up everything inside me, and even after that I still had dry heaves. Quickly, I sprayed some air freshener in the bathroom, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the garage. I got in the car, opened the garage door, and sped down the street, closing the door behind me. I drove to a nearby mall parking lot and sat in the car, trying to figure out what to do next. I thought about calling my brother-in-law Bob and telling him what I'd overheard. But I was still in denial that Janice could be unfaithful and that Sean might not be my son. I felt sick. But as I thought more about her affair with some guy named Randy, my anger started to grow. What the hell was I going to tell Bob about Carla and Mark? I needed legal advice immediately to figure out my options if this turned into a divorce. The women were leaving for their trip in 4 days and I had a lot to figure out before then. I pulled out my cell phone and called my friend, golfing buddy, high school friend and lawyer, Jerry Matthews. His secretary, Helen, answered, and I asked if I could see Jerry as soon as possible. Helen knew me well, and she could hear in my voice that something was wrong. She asked, "Can you be here in 15 minutes?" I told her I could and drove over quickly. When I walked into Jerry's office, Helen took one look at me and said, "Jim, you look terrible." "I've had some bad news, Helen, and I think I'm coming down with something." "Is Jerry free now?" "Yes, go right in," she said. Clearly worried as she looked at me, I hurried past her, knocked once and entered Jerry's office. He stood up as I came in and motioned me to a chair in front of his desk. "Good God, Jim, what's going on? You look awful." "Jerry, I've been striking with 2 blows today. One I might recover from, but the other I'm not sure I can." "Tell me about it," he said, sitting down. "First, I think I'm coming down with something. And second, I think I have a serious problem with Janice. I need some advice." "Well, the first issue shouldn't be a problem since I've had my flu shot. As for Janice, that's hard to believe. I've known both of you since you got married, and you've always seemed like the perfect couple. What's going on?" I told Jerry what I'd overheard earlier that afternoon, and he looked shocked. "I can't believe Janice or Carla would do something like this. And if Janice deliberately had a child with another man, that's unbelievable. So what do you want to do? Are you thinking of divorce, or do you think you can get past her infidelity and the child issue?" "I don't think I can forgive her right now. You know I don't handle divorces," Jerry said. "But I can refer you to a good divorce attorney who can guide you through this if that's what you want. You'll need more proof than just what you've overheard, especially about Sean's paternity. Do you want me to call him and set up a meeting?" "Yes, please," I said, feeling a wave of emotion overcome me. Tears welled up, and before I knew it, I was sobbing as the weight of what I was about to do hit me. Jerry looked at me sympathetically and buzzed Helen. "Helen, can you get Sam Ridley on the phone?" "God, no," I heard Helen say quietly, but she quickly connected Jerry to Sam. "Sam, hey, it's Jerry. Do you have time tomorrow morning to talk with a good friend of mine about a situation he's dealing with?" There was a brief pause while Jerry listened. "How does 9 a.m. tomorrow sound in Sam's office?" "He's in the same building. It's a bit late to do it today." "That works," I nodded. Jerry leaned back in his chair and gave me one last piece of advice. "I suggest you go home now, and try not to let Janice know anything's wrong. This might not be what it seems, and you could do irreparable damage if you react too quickly." "You're right," I sighed. "I've got to keep it together until I'm sure. Thanks for your help, Jerry." We stood and he shook my hand. "I'm really sorry about this, Jim. You and Janice have always been 2 of my closest friends. Your pain is my pain. Thanks again, Jerry. I'll keep you updated on what happens." On my way out, Helen looked at me with teary eyes. "I'm so sorry, Jim." "Thanks, Helen." When I got home that evening, it was around my usual time from work, so Janice didn't suspect anything out of the ordinary. But she immediately noticed my appearance. "Jim, honey, you look awful. Are you feeling okay?" I clenched my teeth. I wanted to lash out to make her feel the pain I was in, knowing what I now knew. But instead I forced a smile and said, "I think I'm coming down with something." Then with a hint of malice I added, "I hope I feel better in a few days so you can still go on your trip." For a moment I saw her falter, but she quickly brushed it off. "It's probably just a touch of the flu. You should be fine by Friday." "I hope so. Right now I just want to lie down. Can I skip dinner tonight and eat later?" I asked, eager to avoid more conversation. "Of course, honey, go change and rest." "Why didn't you come home earlier?" she asked. "I tried, but there was too much going on at work," I lied. "Take some aspirin and I'll check on you in a bit." The kids enjoyed their day at daycare and Carla and I went shopping as usual. I saw the cutest pair of sandals, but they didn't have my size, so I didn't buy anything. I felt numb, overwhelmed with sickness and grief. I trudged upstairs to our bedroom, avoiding the kids in the family room. I especially couldn't look at Sean yet. God, what if he wasn't my son? What would I do? I remembered before Jan's trip 3 years ago, she hadn't let us have sex the week before or after, claiming she had an infection. Had she purposely slept with Randy to conceive his child? The thought of her betrayal was almost too much to bear. I didn't wake up until the next morning. I felt a bit better physically. Like it might have been just a 24-hour flu. But the moment I recalled what I'd overheard, the depression returned. I glanced at Janice, peacefully sleeping next to me, her face so innocent. It was hard to picture her with another man, but I had to face that possibility. I got up, took a shower and dressed for work. I grabbed a cup of coffee and left the house before Janice came downstairs. I could hear her upstairs with the kids, but I still couldn't face them. I had breakfast at Denny's and got to work early, trying to focus on my job. Around 8:30, I told my boss I needed to take a couple of hours of personal time. He gave me a nod and asked, "How are you feeling? You didn't look great when you left early yesterday." "I'll be fine, it's going to take some time to recover," I said. Though my mind was on Janice, not the flu. At 9 a.m., I was at Sam Ridley's office. His secretary showed me in and closed the door behind her. Sam's office had a cozy seating area with comfortable chairs around a low table. After greeting me, he waved me to one of the chairs and sat across from me. "In this line of work," he said, "I find this setup helps my clients feel more at ease. Divorce is emotional and personal. I've got decaf coffee here if you want some. Why don't you start by telling me what's going on and we'll go from there?" I poured myself a cup of coffee and began explaining everything to Sam. When I finished, he paused for a moment and then asked, "Do you love your wife?" I thought I did. I thought I loved her more than anything. But now, thinking about what she may have done, I feel cold and empty inside. It's like she's become someone I don't even know, a stranger. I keep wishing this was all just a nightmare and that I'd wake up and everything would be fine, but I have to consider the kids, they're my biggest concern. Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Well, we need to confirm if she's committing infidelity. If what you overheard is true, you'll have to decide whether you want to pursue a divorce. We'll need to hire an investigator to follow her in Chicago this weekend. It could get expensive, so you might want to involve your brother-in-law to share the cost. If both of them are cheating, we can deal with both situations at once." "Yeah, that makes sense," I said, agreeing with him. Next, Sam continued, "We'll need to arrange DNA tests to confirm the paternity of your kids. I suggest your brother-in-law does the same, but you can talk to him about it. We should schedule another meeting with him present." I shook my head. I don't want to involve Bob until after they've gone on their trip. Right now, I'm struggling to act normally around Janice, and I can use the flu as an excuse. But if I tell Bob now and he acts differently around Carla, they might catch on. "That's smart," Sam acknowledged. "Can you give me Janice's itinerary so I can pass it to the investigator? It'd help to have the hotel name and room number if she has one booked." "They usually reserve the same room each year," I replied. "I'll get that for you along with any other details." "Do they fly or drive?" Sam asked. "They fly and use taxis or shuttles," I answered. "That'll make it easier to keep track of them," Sam said. "Now you need to secure your finances." "Do you know what I mean by that?" "I think so," I said cautiously. "Protect your assets," Sam explained. "Assume for now that what you heard is true. If your wife has access to joint accounts, credit cards, etc., think about changing the beneficiaries on your insurance policies to your kids. Sometimes when a spouse senses a breakup, they drain the accounts. You can always change things back if it turns out there's no issue. Be as generous as you like with the joint checking account so she can manage, but secure the rest. You should also give your brother-in-law a heads up. When we negotiate the divorce, we can aim for a fair split of the assets." "Got it, I'll start working on that today," I said, determined. "I hope this turns out to be nothing, Jim. But if it's true, you should be able to get custody of your older son without any trouble," Sam reassured me. "Thanks, Sam. I'll get you that itinerary by tomorrow," I promised. After leaving Sam's office, I headed straight to the bank. I closed all our joint savings and CD accounts, transferring the money into a new account in my name only. I left $1,000 in our joint checking account and moved the rest into my personal savings. Next, I contacted my stockbroker and transferred our investments into my own account. He seemed a little worried about what it might mean, but I didn't explain. I considered canceling our credit cards, but worried that if any charges were declined while they were in Chicago, it would raise suspicion. So I decided to hold off until I had more information from the investigator. Back at the office, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. I couldn't bring myself to eat lunch. I wasn't sure if it was lingering effects from the flu or the constant images of Janice with another man that made me lose my appetite. My stress and anger kept rising, but I knew I had to stay calm. When I got home that evening, I continued to fake being sick. Janice seemed genuinely concerned. "Why didn't you stay home today? You shouldn't have gone to work." "I didn't want to risk you or the kids getting sick. If you caught it, you might not be able to go on your trip with Carla this weekend." I replied, watching her reaction closely. "You could be right. Maybe you should sleep in the spare room until you feel better." The thought that crossed my mind was unbearable. She was ensuring her weekend with her lover wouldn't be interrupted. I realized it was going to be tough to keep her from suspecting that I knew anything. Over the next few days, I kept up the act of being sick, navigating dinners and conversations while pretending to be unwell. I checked her AOL email account but discovered she had changed the password. After some guesswork, I figured it out. It was Sean's name and birthdate. Once inside, I found a series of emails from someone with the username RNYM. I copied them into a file to print later. Reading through a few confirmed my worst fears, proof of her affair. They had been planning for the weekend, and it seemed they used the phone while I was at work. Most of the arrangements were already made, so I didn't expect to learn much more from the emails. But they provided enough written evidence. Now, I just had to wait. The next day, I faxed a copy of Janice's itinerary to Sam and tried to function normally at work. It wasn't easy. My boss and secretary could tell something was wrong but didn't push me. I printed off the emails from RNYM and mailed them to Sam. I learned that this affair had been going on for 4 years during their annual trip. Randy and Mark booked one room while Janice and Carla booked the adjoining room. So they could each share a space with their respective lover. They reserved the same rooms every year. Randy and Mark, it turned out, were married and lived in Milwaukee. They used the Chicago Boat Show as their excuse for the trip, leaving their wives to watch the kids at home. Friday arrived and Janice and Carla were set to leave for the airport around noon. When I came downstairs, Janice had made coffee. "I wanted to make you a good breakfast before I left," she said, cooking bacon and eggs, which was unusual since I usually just had cereal. "I'm worried about you. You haven't been eating well all week. That flu must really be holding on. I'm sorry we haven't been physical engaged this week, and I appreciate you trying to keep us from getting sick. When I get back Sunday, you should feel better and I'll show my appreciation then." "Thanks, Jan, I'm looking forward to it," I said, forcing a smile and giving her a quick kiss on the cheek. She seemed satisfied with the gesture. "Don't forget to be home by noon today. You'll need to start watching the kids so we can get to the airport on time," she reminded me. "I haven't forgotten," I replied, my voice slipping into a low growl as I fought to keep my composure. The thought of what she might be planning for the weekend was eating away at me. She looked at me concerned. "What's wrong, Jim? Are you mad at me for something?" No, I quickly said, trying to sound casual. "Just clearing my throat, must be some phlegm." I forced a smile, hoping it would pass as genuine. She gave me a strange look but didn't press the issue and went back to chatting. After breakfast, I grabbed my suit jacket and briefcase, heading towards the garage. "Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye?" she asked, watching me with curiosity. Realizing I needed to put in more effort or she might get suspicious, I dropped my briefcase, turned around and took her in my arms, kissing her on the lips. My stomach twisted with nausea, but I forced it down, trying to convey affection. It must have worked because when I pulled away she said, "Wow honey, maybe you should stay home this morning and we can have our Sunday sex today." I forced a laugh and said, "I'd like to, but if I'm going to take half the day off, I need to get some work done first." I kissed her cheek, picked up my briefcase and headed to the garage. She was smiling as I left, and I hoped I had erased any suspicion. If she wanted to play the loving wife, I could keep up the role of devoted husband a little longer. I got home by noon as promised and Janice had lunch waiting for me. We ate together and chatted while she gathered her bags by the door. I forced myself to remain calm and cheerful, even though inside I was boiling with anger and frustration. "Well, I hope you girls are going to behave yourselves," I said, trying to sound as light-hearted as possible. "We always do, honey," she replied with a smirk, "but there are always some cute guys to look at." "As long as it's just looking," I added more seriously, "because if you ever decided to play around it would destroy me. I don't think I could handle it, and I know our marriage wouldn't survive." She looked startled for a moment but then smiled. "You know I've always been faithful to you, Jim, and that won't ever change." "I know, but you're a beautiful woman and I'm sure you get hit on sometimes. And I understand that a stay-at-home mom might get bored." Her face went pale, but before she could respond, Carla honked outside signaling her arrival. Janice gave me a quick kiss and turned away. As I picked up her bags and followed her to the car, I thought I saw a tear in her eye. A few minutes later, I stood on the driveway watching as their car disappeared down the street. We waved goodbye, maybe for the last time. After feeding the kids lunch, I called Bob and told him I'd be stopping by for a minute. He sounded surprised but said he'd be home, so I packed up the kids and drove over. I had copies of Janice's emails with me. When I arrived, Bob was finishing feeding Melissa and greeted us with a smile as we walked in. "Hey guys, let's head into the family room and watch a video with the kids." "I'm not staying long," I said. "Bob, we need to talk, let the kids go play." He looked puzzled but did as I asked, sending the kids into the family room. "What's going on and what do you have there?" he asked, pointing to the packet in my hand. "These are for you to read," I told him as we sat at the kitchen table. "But first I need to tell you something really bad, so try to stay calm." "What's wrong? Are you dying or something?" "No, but I wish it were that simple. This could be the end of our marriages." Bob went pale and sat in silence as I told him about the conversation I overheard between Janice and Carla a few days ago. Then I handed him the emails to read. Oh my God, he kept muttering as he read through them. His devastation was clear. He loved Carla as much as I loved Janice. When he finished, he put his head on the table and cried. After a while he calmed down and I told him about Sam, the investigator in Chicago, and what I had done with my finances. I mentioned my plan to visit a clinic for DNA tests to determine the paternity of my kids, and asked if he wanted to come with me. The thought that Melissa might not be his daughter hadn't even crossed his mind until then. His eyes widened in shock, and he suddenly bolted for the bathroom. I could hear him vomiting, the dry heaves eerily familiar from my own reaction a few days earlier. When he returned, pale and shaken, he agreed to come with us. We gathered the kids and drove to the clinic. The staff was professional and quick, taking saliva swabs from all of us. I also asked for a blood test to record our blood types. They said the results would be faxed by Wednesday. After leaving the clinic, we stopped by Bob's bank, where he made changes to his accounts. He decided to contact his broker and insurance agent from home. On the way back, I asked if he wanted to stay at my house for the weekend, suggesting he shouldn't be alone. After some thought, he agreed, but wanted to stop by his house to pick up a few things. That evening, we sat in the kitchen after putting the kids to bed, talking about what we were going to do. Now that we knew our wife's betrayal had been going on for 4 years, we agreed to wait until the investigator's report and the DNA results came in before making any decisions. We also realized we would have to act as if everything was normal when our wives returned. We'd have to pretend to be the loving husbands and even sleep with them, all while waiting for the truth to unfold. Bob mentioned that his doctor had given him some Viagra samples for a previous issue, and he thought they might help him get through the weekend. I told him I'd pick up a couple of doses when I dropped him off at his house on Sunday. The weekend passed in silence, with our wives none the wiser. Each night, Jan and Carla called, and we acted happy to hear from them. They seemed pleased that Bob and I were spending the weekend together with the kids. Jan even suggested we do it again next year. I thought bitterly, yeah, if there even is a next year. On Sunday afternoon, before they returned home, I dropped Bob and Melissa back at their house. I picked up a few doses of the Viagra and headed back to my place, preparing to confront Janice. Around 4 p.m., I heard a honk outside. Janice was home. I went out to help her with her luggage and she was all smiles, seemingly happy to see me. I thought, if she can act happy, so can I. So I played the part of the loving husband, despite the anger churning inside me, knowing what she had done. The kids were thrilled to see their mom, and she spent time with them while I unpacked her bags. I found her dirty laundry, mostly lingerie, and held my breath as I checked 2 pairs of underwear for any signs of seed. There was nothing conclusive, but I couldn't relax. If she had removed them before sex and hadn't put them back on, there wouldn't necessarily be any signs. I sighed and rejoined my family. That evening we went out for a family dinner. Later, after the kids were in bed, Janice took my hand and led me upstairs. "Why don't you get undressed?" she asked with a smile. Her eyes bright. She went into the bathroom to freshen up, and when she returned I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't bring myself to touch her, knowing what I knew. Instead I lay there, planning my next steps and waiting for the investigator's report. The next morning at work I got a call from Sam. The investigator had gotten both video and still shots of Janice with Randy and Carla with Mark. He would finish the report and have everything delivered to Sam's office by Wednesday. "Wednesday's going to be a big day," Sam said. A wave of nausea hit me, but this time it wasn't from the flu. He then asked, "What's your plan going forward?" "We should meet with Bob to figure out the next steps." "I'll call Bob and set it up," I replied. After hanging up, I immediately called Bob at his office. I told him about the investigator's findings and Sam's request for a meeting. Bob started to break down, his voice trembling as he quietly cried. It took a moment for him to pull himself together, and we agreed to meet with Sam on Thursday morning after we received the DNA results on Wednesday. We also agreed to stay calm and avoid raising suspicion with our wives. When I called Sam back, we set the meeting for Thursday at 9 a.m. That evening at home, Janice didn't mention anything about sex, which was a relief. I still couldn't bring myself to touch her, though I kept up the act of being normal. Every interaction twisted my stomach, knowing what I had seen and what I was about to uncover. Thursday morning came quickly. Bob and I met at Sam's office, both looking like we hadn't slept in days. Sam had everything ready, including a TV near his desk. After greeting us, he gestured to the TV. "I've got the footage queued up. We can watch it with or without sound, your choice." We decided to watch without sound first. Sam turned on the TV and the image came to life. The camera angle was from above, likely hidden near the ceiling. An undressed man I didn't recognize appeared first and lay down on the bed. My stomach clenched as the scene unfolded. Moments later, a woman in a short black nightie walked into view, straddling the man's legs. It was Janice. I jumped up from my chair and ran to the bathroom, vomiting violently. It felt like my insides were being ripped apart. When I returned, Sam had paused the footage. Janice was wearing the same nightie she'd worn during our last sex session the previous Sunday. I nodded for him to continue. Janice was now on her back with the man on top of her in the missionary position. Sam turned on the sound and we heard their labored breathing. "I'm so glad we do this once a year, Randy," Janice said between gasps. "If I didn't have this, I'd go stir crazy at home. I love my husband, but he wouldn't respect me if I did with him what I do with you." Randy's voice responded, equally breathless. "I feel the same way, January." Sam quickly turned off the sound, sparing us more of their talk. The footage played for a few more minutes until they climaxed. Then, Sam switched to the second video, which showed Carla and Mark in a similar encounter. When it was over, Sam turned off the TV and looked at us. "What do you want to do, gentlemen? Do you want to proceed with divorce?" Bob and I sat in stunned silence for a few moments before I finally spoke. "Sam, we've discussed this and we want to move forward with the divorce papers. But hold off serving them until we tell you. We also want the full names and addresses of Randy and Mark. We plan to send their wives copies of the report and the videos." "Understood," Sam nodded. The investigator included their names and addresses in his report. "I'll give you copies before you leave, along with the video footage." "What about your children's paternity?" Bob and I handed him the DNA results we had picked up that morning. "Sean isn't my son," I said sadly, "but I'd like to adopt him. I've raised him, and I can't imagine life without him." "You'd need the biological father's consent for that," Sam explained. "But if you file a paternity suit and push for child support, he might sign away his rights to avoid paying." That's what I'm thinking, I agreed. Can we also sue for alienation of affection? Absolutely, that could give you leverage. Do you want to proceed with both the paternity suit and the alienation of affection claim? Yes, I replied without hesitation. Sam then asked, have you confronted your wives yet? No, I said. We're planning to do that tonight during dinner. Alright, here are copies of the report and the video. I'll get the paperwork started, Sam said, handing us the materials. I'm sorry it's come to this, but we'll get through it. After leaving Sam's office, Bob and I headed to an audio-video store to make extra copies of the video. While there, I bought a wiretap recorder I planned to set up at home over the weekend. Then we went to Kinko's to print extra copies of the report. Once we had everything, we bought large shipping envelopes, addressed them to the wives of Randy and Mark, and sent them express mail to their homes in Milwaukee. Inside we included a brief handwritten note explaining who we were, and how they could contact us or Sam if needed. Later that day at work I told my boss I was taking a few days off for personal reasons. He agreed and I made sure my staff knew how to reach me. I called the credit card companies to cancel our joint accounts, and opened a new card in my name only. I also canceled Janice's cell phone. Checking her email from my office, I found a message she had sent to Randy on Monday morning, telling him she had made it home safely, and was looking forward to next year. Randy hadn't replied yet. The rest of the day I spent uploading parts of the video and images from the report onto my computer, creating a secure website to document the infidelity. I included details about dates, times, and places, along with the DNA test results. With everything in place, I left work, knowing the confrontation was just hours away. When I got home that evening, Bob, Carla, and Melissa were already at the house. After we made drinks, Bob and I sat in the family room while the women and kids were in the kitchen preparing dinner. Is everything ready? Bob asked. I just need to load the video into the DVD player, I said. I pulled one of the copies from my briefcase and loaded it.